Ireland is exposed to a looming energy shortage. We now depend on 90% of our fuels from insecure sources abroad. Together with the rising cost of imported fuel, being at the end of a gas pipeline from Russia makes us very vulnerable. Oil, coal and peat are polluting fuels and CO2 intensive. We generate power inefficiently, with over 60% wasted before reaching our homes, and with only 8% sourced from wind and hydro, the carbon emissions from our electricity are very high. We now have an urgent mandate from the EU to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by at least 20% by 2020. We've no choice but to act urgently. It's a daunting task. With our exceptionally windy climate, our strategic solution depends on harnessing most of our electricity from wind. We've seen some increases in wind farms here, but compared to our European neighbours with less suitable wind regimes, we're way behind. Also, there have not been enough micro-wind turbines installed here. Despite the difficulties, a few enlightened farmers and householders have invested in micro-wind power. Some are self-sufficient, operating without a connection to the grid. Deirdre and Norman Kennedy run an organic farm near Carbery in County Kildare. I met them to find out how their 2.5 kilowatt wind turbine is working out.
We grow the full range of organic vegetables. We grow wheat, potatoes, seed potatoes, and we produce organic eggs.
Right, and where do you sell to, Norman?
We have markets in farmers markets. We do one in Trim, we have one in Dublin Food Co-op, and we sell locally here on a farm shop here as well.
From an energy point of view, where do you get your energy from?
We have our own wind turbine backed up with a solar system. We produce our own firewood. The heat in the house comes from a solid fuel stove. And yeah, that's how we do it.
Self-sufficient in all of energy?
Pretty much,
For heating, for power, for electricity?
For the house,
For the house, everything?
Yeah.
It works out extremely well, yeah. We're delighted with it. I mean, there's the no bills, but I mean, there is a very high capital cost to put it in to start with. Yeah.
So you're completely green in terms of every way with energy, aren't you?
Well,
zero CO2.
We're pretty green, yeah.
Right. We'd like to think we are anyway, yes.
Yeah. If you had a grid connection, would it save you a lot of money? Capital cost?
It would. We would save a lot of capital in the cost of the batteries and the generator. We would not have to have this. We would be able to sell back to the grid on a day like today when it's very windy, and then when there's no wind we could buy back, and hopefully the difference would be minimal.
Right.
That way.
And why did you not go that route?
It wasn't available at the time we installed this. Yes, from the ESB. This was 4 years ago when we put this in.
If the ESB gave connection to the grid, do you think a lot of people would take up what you've done?
Yeah, they would. I think the capital cost for it would be an awful lot less. You're talking nearly half the amount, because the batteries are costing us 8,000-9,000, generator another 4,000. That's 13,000. The whole cost of the unit was about, it's coming in nearly at 30,000 including that. So you're nearly coming back to half what it would have. So if they did allow grid connection, you could sell when you have surplus and buy back when you don't have any wind. It would much easier.
So really we need to see grid connections in Ireland?
Yeah, it would be a big help to have a grid connection. At a good cost, at a good price, yeah.
Like solar, wind energy fluctuates, so it needs storing, either in batteries or preferably by selling and buying back from the grid. I went to see Paul Carbery near Boltonglass in this borrowed Riva, a car that runs solely on electricity. I needed to recharge after 60 kilometres, so I asked Paul if I could plug the car into his free wind power. Paul has installed a 6 kilowatt turbine with a 5.5 metre diameter blade. Are the floodlights now for your tennis court also powered on this?
Well, the floodlights everything here is powered from the turbine. This is actually one of the first grid connect. We've only actually done it over the last couple of days at long last.
So you have now got a grid connection?
We have actually got a grid connect.
That's a huge change, isn't it?
It is a big change, because the whole problem with batteries, and I mean, you know, the lifestyles that people have lived because of having to go with batteries, hasn't been a comfortable existence. So this is the way to move forward. The problem that still exists, unfortunately, is that there is no tariff in place.
So in other words, you've got an import-export meter. You can buy your electricity, obviously, from the grid like everybody else. But when you go to sell it, you get nothing. Is that right?
Absolutely correct. That's the situation as and from today. We've actually got our meter now being fitted. But we will export our power but there's no mechanism there. Unfortunately, there's no mechanism like there is everywhere else in Europe to pay us for this electricity. We're giving it back free.
This needs to be sorted urgently. Households, farms and schools throughout rural Ireland could avail of this opportunity. And there's no better example than in our local schools. We visit Paul's daughter at St. Breed's near Baltinglass, where they hope to install a wind turbine. Paul is bringing me to see a 2.5 kilowatt machine being erected close to a mountain farm site. But before this, Proven Energy from Scotland, together with RES, are running a training course in the Wicklow Mountains.
So, under the extreme wind conditions that we are experiencing these days in Ireland, how does this machine fare up?
As the wind blows stronger, and the winds are getting stronger, the turbine will attempt to speed up. The centrifugal force will pull the blade out, and it causes this rubber hinge to flatten. And if you look at the tip of the blade, you'll notice that the trailing edge, the sharp edge of the blade, is lifting off the table, and that is actually changing the aerodynamic performance of the blade, and it will actually limit the amount of power that it can capture.
The mountain site is near the Glen of Amal, a very exposed and ideal site for wind generation. If you're considering installing a micro-wind generator, you need a windy site, or at least a mast 15 to 25 metres high, to clear all wind turbulence. Richard Curtis is supervising the raising of this turbine. So how do you raise this?
Right, well, we've got the guys ready to winch the tower up. We've got this mechanism here, the A, which is called the gin pole, and that just acts to basically give us a bit of lift to start with. You can lift it all with hand tools. We carry it all up. It's a fairly straightforward lift. And once we start going now, 5 minutes, the turbine will be up, and then that's done, that's up.
As simple as that?
It's pretty much as simple as that. That will go.
As with solar collectors, there are now exemptions to planning permission for micro-wind installations. These help free up restrictive bottlenecks. But depending on turbine size, mast height, proximity to houses or boundaries, and noise limits, planning permission may be required. The next stage is electrics. I met with Richard Caldo to see how Paul's turbine is controlled. So what's going on here?
Basically here, this is the controller for the turbine. We have the power coming down.
This is coming now from the turbine here?
From the turbine, yeah. And that's AC. Wild frequency, it varies with the wind for the speed of the turbine. It's rectified to DC, which feeds into this box here, which is the inverter, which synchronises to the 220 volts AC.
So this is the important piece here, is it?
This is the most important part of the whole kit, really. This is the brains of the operation.
With the brains now synchronised to the grid, there's no excuse for not connecting microwind all over the country. And with wind conditions very similar to Scotland, there's an opportunity to learn from their experience. So what's the potential in Scotland for micro-wind generation?
Huge potential. If 50% of the farms throughout Scotland erected a 15 kilowatt and connected to the grid, it would supply 70% of the nation's usage.
70% of all of Scotland's electricity?
Yes.
From micro-wind generation?
From micro-generation.
That's incredible potential.
And we have the potential in this country we've got the wind speeds that are the best in Europe. We've got everything in place, we've got the technology. It's simply down to a tariff, and a good tariff. Equally, we should be as good as Scotland at least. We've seen the rest of Europe. They're moving forward, they've given good tariffs to the people, and here we are, sitting here with the best potential in the world, and we're letting it go to waste.
Every other country in Western Europe is succeeding with microgeneration, and they all have attractive incentives and tariffs in place. Their electricity utilities are required to connect their micropower to the grid, offering feed-in tariffs of 11 to 12 cents per kilowatt hour, guaranteed for 15 to 20 years, like in Scotland and Northern Ireland. This needs to happen here urgently. Discussions are currently underway with the Minister's Office, and EcoEye intend to return to the subject soon. Ours is the first generation to spend 90% of our time indoors. 2/3 of that is inside our home. You may be surprised to discover that the quality of the air you breathe indoors can be worse than the traffic polluted stuff you're getting when you step outside your front door. Today I'm in northwest Dublin with first-time buyers Jane and Catherine. to find out just what we subject ourselves to indoors through the long winter months.
Yeah, go on ahead.
Very good. Very lovely. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Duncan. Very nice to meet you.
you.
How are you? Can we
Thank
take your
you.
coat?
Oh, great. Thanks a lot.
Have a cup of coffee?
Oh, if it's going.
Of course it is.
Brilliant.
Brilliant, I'll hang this
Lovely.
Leave yourself at home.
Yeah, so how long are you here?
We are here for 6 months now.
So you're quite new to the house, are you?
Yeah, we just moved in.
Yeah.
Feels new
Pretty
still.
good.
So how's the house? How do you find it? How old is it?
It's nearly 20 years old, at least I'd say, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right, probably got all the same typical problems with
Yeah,
20-year-old.
well, we haven't really done anything with it, and it's the same structurally, all the windows and doors.
Single glazed.
Window, yeah.
Probably poorly insulated.
It is, yeah. It gets
Probably,
quite
yeah.
cold,
You do
especially
feel a
upstairs,
chill
it's
back by
cold.
the windows, especially
Really?
at night. You can almost feel it coming in, the air coming in.
Right, you
Yeah.
probably get some dampness too and things like that
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
condensation.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
But fairly typical of a house of that period.
I imagine
Yeah.
so.
Most of our existing homes suffer from air quality issues, as building standards in the past were poor. I invited air quality expert Martin Fitzpatrick to give me a breakdown of the problems facing Catherine and Jane.
So why is ventilation in a bedroom so important?
Well, ventilation is crucial because you'll be spending 8 to 10 hours perhaps here per day.
Generating a lot of moisture too, aren't you?
You are indeed. And the only good thing is there is a permanent air vent here, which is quite important. And I've noticed that she does actually have an openable window. So if she is able to move her bed over there, she perhaps can open the window at night and not get the effect of a draft.
A small amount of ventilation through the window would be
Very
a good
important.
idea. And there's a lot of humidity here. You can see there's condensation forming on the window.
Well, we can start to see the telltale signs here of build-up of condensation. There is mould growth in the window frames. Also notice the walls are quite cold, which makes me think the insulation here isn't particularly good either.
Ventilation is essential when sleeping in a bedroom, as it replenishes oxygen and expels the vapour-laden and contaminated air from the confined space.
What are the main issues you'd be concerned with?
Well, Duncan, one of the things about the kitchen, it's one area of the house where we create lots of warm, moist air through lots of activities such as cooking, such as washing, such as heating. So it's really important that you've got really good ventilation in the cooking area. Now, obviously, there's no ventilation to the external air with this particular type of system. So basically, you're emitting all that grease, all that air, all that warm moisture into the room where people are actually living and cooking.
And I noticed here that there was condensation forming on the windows, running down the windows, and you can see the black mould growth stains here.
Yes, that's
and you can see it on the wallpaper peeling off the wall. There's a gas boiler fitted here in the kitchen. What's good about this one is it's a sealed unit, and the fresh air comes in from the outside through the unit and back out, exhaust back out again directly. That's good.
Well, that's really important, Duncan. It means we're not getting any emissions here within the room. The one thing I just be a little bit wary about, we need to check when this was last serviced.
Well, actually, 1997 is what's written here. It was the last service, according to this.
Okay, now that's not an ideal situation at all. You should be getting it serviced much more regularly.
Every year.
Absolutely, yeah.
The bathroom is obviously a major source of moisture that needs to be vented outside as quickly as possible. Water vapour escaping from the bathroom can permeate throughout the house, finding cold surfaces, causing condensation and creating damp conditions for mould, spores and dust mites.
They have an openable window. Now it's really important they make use of this.
The sitting room here, Martin, yeah, and an open fire.
Absolutely.
And they've converted to a gas effect fire too. This must have its own issues, has it?
Well, I think the first thing with a gas effect fire like this, Duncan, is it's a highly inefficient way of heating a room.
Contaminants from unsealed combustion appliances like gas or open fires can be dangerous, as carbon monoxide is a silent killer. Where fires are lit, permanent vents are necessary, or at least an open door or window. Dr. Luke Clancy, a leading medical expert, explains the health effect of contaminants.
Well, when you consider that we spend most of our life now, nearly all of it, indoors,
90%
between home and office and schools and factories and cars. We're hardly ever outside. So indoor environment is crucial. And of course, while it's relatively clean, there are things that make it not so clean. And the biggest of these is probably secondhand smoke. But we've also got how we heat our houses, how we cook, the kind of insulation we have, the kind of protection from the outside air. We've been encouraged to not lose heat. And of course, not losing heat means keeping air in. That means very few changes of air. That means the propensity to infect each other. This time of the year, that's the way colds and flus are spread. And we're more likely to get them when we're in a confined space with very little circulation of air.
There's a perfect example of this in Catherine and Jane's house with an open fire and no permanent ventilation.
what is happening there at the moment is that there's no ventilation in there.
Okay.
Is it a big job to have vents
No,
put in?
it's not. It's easy to do, but once you have a gas fire in there, you really should have ventilation.
Very important.
It's
Okay.
critical. Yeah. And of course, the kitchen here, similar things with vapour here. You're generating an awful lot of vapour in the kitchen. That is an issue because it doesn't extract to the outside.
Okay.
And it's recirculating moist air back into the house.
It's basically the same area.
And it needs servicing too.
Okay, yeah.
Like with the boiler. When was the boiler last serviced?
I think 97.
Not in our lifetime.
Yeah, it says it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
What you need to do is get less moisture in the house.
Yeah.
Get rid of the moisture out of the house through extraction.
Yeah.
And then get more fresh air into the house.
Okay, yeah.
That would be really important. When you've bad insulation, it forms, it condenses in corners, mildew creates in behind wardrobes,
Okay.
you know, on carpets and bedclothes, everything.
Naturally occurring radon gas kills hundreds of people every year in Ireland. If there are smokers in the house, radon can have a deadly synergistic effect. If you're concerned about radon, you can check with detectors supplied by the RPII.
To hear that like putting vents in is a really simple job is a relief, because they're just things that just seem a little bit unsurmountable when, you know, you already move in somewhere. It's already expensive enough to get by without like thinking about how you're going to completely renovate things.
It's kind of given us something else to think about, because when we're fixing up the house, we're always thinking about the aesthetics and that. So now it's kind of another level that we're thinking about. We're trying to be environmentally friendly and really into recycling everything, but we're really not doing the major things that we could be doing to the house.
Luckily, Catherine and Jane don't smoke, as it's enemy number one, bringing over 4,000 chemicals into our homes and into our lungs. We're unlikely to change the habits of a lifetime and spend more time outdoors. So making our houses safer and better ventilated is inevitably the way forward. There are 250,000 people playing golf in Ireland, and we're famous for having some of the best and most beautiful golf courses in the world. Given that golf courses can make up much of Ireland's open spaces, it's important to consider their environmental impact. I decided to find out for myself just how green our greens really are. Up in the wilds of Donegal, Eamon O'Connor takes the opportunity to get out on the fairways whenever he can. He plays at Donegal Golf Course in Merva, which is part of an All-Ireland project on sustainable development for the golfing sector. As chairman of Ireland's Ecological Greenkeeper Society, he's well placed to see the positive changes that can be created.
Well, the best part of my life has been lived here in Donegal, and the area is absolutely fantastic. I'm involved about 43 years, but golf is a particular game that when you get the bug, it's very hard to shake it off. In Donegal alone, we would have 12 links courses, which is a quarter of the total in Ireland. Links golf course is particular sand, it's total sand, and it was probably deposited at the mouth of a river or by glacier during the Ice Age. So they have been around in various parts of the country here for thousands of years.
Eamon feels very responsible for the welfare of the local wildlife. There's a forest nearby that offers cover and habitat. In keeping with the ideas outlined in the nationwide programme, he's keen to make sure that the daily running and maintenance of the fairways doesn't interfere with the native plant and animal species.
When it was being developed, all the greens and all are all natural greens. In actual fact, they're not resown with fairly grasses from other sources or other countries. They're all natural grasses.
Eamon, this is one of the most spectacular spots, isn't it?
This is absolutely beautiful, especially on a day like today. Look at the panoramic view right around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is not a dune, of course.
No, this is a drumlin. This came from over around Tyrone someplace and was deposited here during the Ice Age.
Keeping the environment intact as much as possible is essential for such a sensitive area. But Donegal Golf Course seems to have this in hand. Bordered by marshes, brimming with wildlife, Eamon is keen to make sure that chemicals and fertilisers are kept to a minimum.
It's one of the particular things about this links is that we try and keep it as natural as possible. Very little chemicals, very little fertilisers, just to keep it as it should be. The problem that you have with a links course is to keep the soil covered. If you don't keep the sand covered, in actual fact you're going to have a blow. So that's the first trick that you must learn, is to keep everything covered with grass if at all possible. Now you have bunkers, and the bunkers have to be so designed so as that the wind, when it does blow, it won't clean the sand out of the bunkers and destroy the sides of the bunkers as well.
Donegal storms can be unforgiving. Club captain Michael McGarvey introduced sea defences to keep the dune formations intact from coastal erosion. Though nothing could prepare him for my assault on his beautifully manicured course when he offered me a quick lesson.
Would you like to play golf yourself, or did you ever play golf?
I've never played golf. I'd be embarrassed now to try, you know.
I wouldn't think so, because anybody can play golf. If you have 2 arms, 2 legs, what more do you want?
Yeah, but it could be very embarrassing if you get it all wrong, you know.
Not at all. We got there.
Move the ball every time.
Don't miss.
Don't miss. Move the ball. It doesn't matter how far it goes, but move it.
Oh, that's pretty bad.
That's it. Oh, he's a natural.
The magic of television. Watch this. Hole in one.
Home to 2 of Ireland's signature golf courses, Carton House has achieved awards for its environmental ethos. Head greenkeeper John Plummer showed me around the courses. They're designed to be sensitive to the historical domain and the special areas of conservation they adjoin.
The main thing we found was we had an SAC going through the estate. You know, all of our waterways and a large amount of our woodlands are special area conservation. So we had protected species that we had to look after. So, you know, we have white-clawed crayfish, we have salmon, we have trout, we have snail, we have numerous plants that are protected. So, you know, everything we do would be geared towards making sure all of those little ecosystems work. Historically, estates were about the landscape. It's a managed landscape, however you choose to manage it, whether it's farming or amenity. And suddenly when you bring golf into an estate like this, it makes it viable. You know, once you can produce a nice golf course, a signature golf course like the 2 we have here, you create revenue stream. That creates staff, and that brings lifeblood back into the estate. So you can do all of these wonderful management programs, but you know, without revenue, without sustainability, that doesn't work. And you know, the golf course brings that to it.
Ireland is world famous for its golf courses, and rightly so. Golf represents our largest recreational use of land, and Fáilte Ireland is keen to see its pilot scheme succeed to maintain a reputation at home and abroad. If all golf courses geared for tourism achieved equally ecological standards, this would position these courses with an attractive edge for more tourists and Irish golfers to visit them. There's no doubt that a golfer's first love will always be golf, but with more people taking to the sport every year, the new challenge will certainly be to keep greener greens. Well, that's all from EcoEye for this series. I hope you've enjoyed watching. There'll be plenty more interesting topics to explore in our next series of EcoEye. So, see you then.